shall I go? What shall I do?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Behave yourselves!
Hello YouTubers out there, this is Jerry Saravia at the movies. So today we're talking about a trailer for a film that I've been looking forward to for quite some time. It's a documentary called SK13, Kubrick's Endgame. And this is a documentary by director Tony Zierra, who did a documentary, a really terrific documentary a few years ago called Film Worker, which dealt with Kubrick's assistant Leon Vitali, who unfortunately passed away a little while ago, about a year ago or so. And he had worked with Kubrick for many years as a personal assistant, with all of the trials and tribulations that go with it. It was a job that he loved doing, apparently, and he you had to have the capacity to deal with Stanley Kubrick, because it wasn't just a matter of working behind the scenes and in a movie and this and that. It was a lifelong job. Day in, day out, I would imagine, if I remember correctly, it was 13, 14 hours a day in some cases. So this guy was really devoted to Stanley Kubrick. And Leon Vitali, by the way, played Barry Lyndon's stepson in the film Barry Lyndon. So the trailer is quite fascinating. I'll have the link below. And it basically says, well, there were certain facts around the making of Eyes Wide Shut. So this is the Blu-ray that I own, of course. Probably many Kubrick aficionados have it, so this is nothing special. But it's the unrated version. I don't know if the R-rated version is in this one. I don't think so. No. I think it's just the unrated version. And that's kind of important to mention because one of the facts that came out at the time was that Steven Spielberg and Sidney Pollack, Steven Spielberg being a close friend of Kubrick, and Sidney Pollack having appeared in the film as Ziegler, worked to finish the film for Stanley Kubrick, because he had passed away a few months before the film was to be released in July of 1999. So Kubrick died in March of 99. One of the facts is that they finished the film because ILM was involved. They had cloaked figures that were digitally superimposed in the film during the scene where Tom Cruise's character, Dr. Bill Harford, is walking through the mansion and sees all these different sexual acts are taking place, very depersonalized sexual acts. And this, by the way, this Blu-ray has those scenes intact without the cloaked figures, which of course never made any sense, because if he's seeing it from his point of view and there are people who are blocking the sexual acts, it doesn't make any sense. But anyway, if you watch the original cut of the film, as was intended, you can see what it is, what's happening. And it's something out of a nightmare. It doesn't even, there's nothing sexy about it. There's nothing sexy about Eyes Wide Shut at all. None of it, which I think was the point of the film. But anyway, so that's one of the rumors. So the press released certain facts about the film before the July release. One of them being, of course, that Stanley Kubrick had shown a cut of the film, a private screening for Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, and I imagine a Warner Brothers executive or whoever it was, I can't remember. It might have been Terry Semmel, I'm not sure. At any rate, they were happy with the film. Stanley Kubrick was content. Great, they liked the film, wonderful. 4 days later, Stanley Kubrick dies. Now, if one of the rumors that was out at the time was the Illuminati was upset with Stanley Kubrick. This sounds like something, I mean, I'm sorry, I just don't believe it, okay? But they were upset and they sent an operative and let's say a poisonous dart or something, and Kubrick was died in his sleep, which is what actually did happen. Now, if you've seen the film about Kubrick's other personal assistant, who was basically his driver, Stanley Kubrick and Me, I think it's called. It's really quite a wonderful little film. I think it's on Netflix. I think it's called Stanley and Me. I can't remember. It's really quite good. That and Film Worker, really good films to see, to learn more about his private life, about Kubrick's private life in particular. So the driver said that he was there that night with Kubrick, or during the day, and Kubrick couldn't, he had one of his pets, his cats, and he couldn't pick him up. And he was just sitting there, and the driver said, maybe you need to go lay down. Because he was completely, he just couldn't move. And he walked upstairs to his bed, and then the following day he died. I'm willing to believe that story. I don't see why that couldn't be true. He was unhealthy. He never went to see a doctor. At least for many, many years, he refused to see doctors. So that is a possibility. I'm willing to believe that more so than the fact that he was killed by the Illuminati for making a film. You know, if the Illuminati wanted to kill you, I think they would have done it at the time that the film project was announced. Not while a cut of the film is available and it's going to be high profile because it's, you know, Tom Cruise. I mean, a Tom Cruise movie can't be avoided, that's for sure. And Nicole Kidman. And it was already done. So, I don't buy that for a second. Anyway, this film will either dispel that fact or not. It's going to deal with a lot of those facts, presumably. But the thing that the trailer also shows is the suggestion that the final cut of the film was not the film that he intended. Now, that there's an adolescent view that Kubrick had towards sex and infidelity and marriage. I find that extremely hard to believe. First of all, having seen the film, I've seen Eyes Wide Shut I don't know how many times. Along with Kubrick's other films, it may be the one I've seen the most, other than perhaps A Clockwork Orange. I think those are the two I've seen the most. The Shining I've seen a few times in my life. 2001 Space Odyssey is one of those films I have seen, but not necessarily entirely, several times. More like certain sections. Although I think it is a masterpiece. These films, other than The Shining, I think are masterpieces. And Full Metal Jacket is a very great movie. I mean, it's certainly one of the best war films ever made, particularly about Vietnam. But this film, Eyes Wide Shut, I've seen several times. Now, I have to say, when I saw it in theaters, it was like I was being put under a spell, like a trance. And I really felt like it was a Kubrick film, and that cool little detachment. But still, you were kind of involved, even though there was a detachment. It's really an amazing thing what he was able to do in his films. The more you see them, the more you realize how intimate he was with his subjects, and yet a cool detachment to a certain extent. I still haven't even completely figured that out yet, but that is kind of what I think Stanley Kubrick could do better than anybody. But the film itself, after I saw it, and you get to the final line of the movie, delivered by Nicole Kidman, playing Alice, Dr. Bill Harford's wife, it was like the spell was broken, like I was out of a trance. And I said, oh my God, like that was really one of the few times in my life I've seen a film where I was completely captivated, other than Kubrick's films, from one shot to the next, from one scene to the next. Like you don't even know you're seeing a movie, you're seeing a dream. You know, it's based on Arthur Schnitzler's wonderful book, A Dream Story, which I think is also called Tram Novelle, if I'm not mistaken. And it's a wonderful story. But I've seen the film more often than I've read the book. You know, the book was like a Victorian era, to some degree, type novel. He was able to update it. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that I didn't feel for a second that there was anything here in this film that wasn't Stanley Kubrick. I didn't think Stanley Kubrick had made compromises. I just didn't feel it. It felt like a Stanley Kubrick film. This documentary may more or less deal with the fact that maybe the film itself is not exactly the way Kubrick intended. And there is this rumor out there, which may or may not be true. R. Lee Ermey, the late R. Lee Ermey, who played the sergeant, the drill sergeant in Full Metal Jacket, apparently got a call from Stanley Kubrick. I don't know the veracity of this claim. And the call was, Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, they had their way with me. And it's like they were, I'm paraphrasing, they were directing the movie. He didn't actually say that, but. And the movie's shit. The critics are going to have a field day with this. Well, most of the film critics, when the film came out, didn't like the film. Most of them thought it wasn't erotic. Most of them thought Kubrick was way out of his element. Of course, realizing or forgetting that the film was not meant to be the things that they thought it was. But it was released, it was rather promoted as a sexual tease. Well, it is a tease, there's no question. But it is not it's not a very sexual film. It sort of touches on it, and every scene has to do with sex in some way or another, but it's not a porno film, and it's certainly not an erotic film. At least not in my mind. I never found the film erotic. But it just, I cannot, I don't know if R. Lee Ermey actually said all these things. Now, apparently, Todd Field, who appeared in the film as Dr. Bill Harford's friend, who he's a jazz pianist, and he's the one that tells Dr. Bill Harford the password to the mansion, Fidelio. So, anyway, he said that he thought R. Lee Ermey was lying. That it couldn't be true, any of this statement. I don't know. Kubrick has not been... Kubrick's only films that I know of where he felt they weren't up to snuff at all were his first couple of films that he made. Fear and Desire, back in the 1950s, which I didn't really care for. It's not a very good film. It's an interesting effort, to be fair. I mean, if you watch it, there's no way that you would not say that there's some talent there, for sure. But that one and Killer's Kiss, which I did like. I like that picture. I think it's only 1 hour and 3 minutes long, but it's actually a strong picture. I thought it was a pretty good little noir. But anyway, the point being, those are the only 2 films. Kubrick, I think, had some issues with Clockwork Orange, only in terms of the reception, particularly in the UK, because of the copycat crimes, and so Kubrick then pulled the film from release with the permission of Warner Brothers, because the film was doing extremely well. I mean, Clockwork Orange was a huge box office success, but because of the copycat crimes and the death threats that he had been receiving, he felt that the film should be pulled. So I don't know. This documentary may or may not be an eye-opener. It's hard to say for sure. I will tell you one thing. She kind of disappeared from Twitter, but I was talking a while ago to Katerina Kubrick, and she followed me also on Twitter, which was kind of nice. So I asked her, I said, what do you think about this film? I mean, was there behind-the-scenes footage of Eyes Wide Shut? And she says, to my knowledge, no, there wasn't. I said, oh, okay. And she says, I don't know what this film is. I'm kind of nervous about it. So, and that was the last thing I heard from her. So, I don't know. Clearly that nobody approached her about this film. And she is in the film, by the way. Katerina Kubrick appears in one scene where Dr. Bill Harford is checking this kid's neck and doing all that, and she's in the background. I think that was actually Kubrick's grandson, if I'm not mistaken. That was her actual son, if I'm not mistaken. Why wouldn't you approach Katerina Kubrick? So it doesn't seem like anybody asked her any questions. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm curious to see this film. I don't know when it's being released. I'll have the link below for the rest of you, and tell me what you think. What do you think of Eyes Wide Shut? What do you think about the drama behind the film? Maybe some of you have some ideas on it or know certain things. I certainly don't know everything about Eyes Wide Shut, that's for sure. Is there maybe behind the scenes footage or alternate takes or things having to do with Harvey Keitel, who was in the film, and then Jennifer Jason Leigh was also originally in the picture? Let me your thoughts. Tell me what you think. This documentary could prove to be quite fascinating. Maybe there's things he found out. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. And tell me if you've seen these other documentaries, Stanley and Me, and particularly Film Worker, which is a great film. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Lend me yours. And if you are a subscriber, thank you very much. And hit that notification bell for future uploads. And if you aren't a subscriber, please subscribe. I talk about films. I talk about film reviews. I also have been recently uploading new clips from my film, which may or may not make it to YouTube. If it doesn't, it will be on Facebook, maybe. You know, it's hard to say because copyright and all that stuff. Maybe I'll have individual scenes I can at least show. That would be cool. At the very least, it will be something. But anyway, leaving all that aside, film reviews, all sorts of film topics covered here. So, let me your thoughts. Tell me what you think. And I guess that's all I got to say about that. And this is Jerry Saravia at the Movies, signing off.